Trying to fix your structural imbalances on your lifts can cause more harm than good. Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and this is something I thought I would chat with everyone about. So this is one of those things where you see all the time. You'll see people who, when they have good form and they are tight, on different lifts, maybe one side dips a hair lower than the other, right? Maybe a squat, maybe a bench press. On a lot of these lifts, right, sometimes our range of motion seems a little bit different on one side versus the other, or we have a slight variation that causes a minor unilateral muscle imbalance, and people think that, I have to fix this. I have to fix it. This is going to cause injury. And what we need to be clear about, barring being a competitive bodybuilder to where you need perfect symmetry, no, this isn't true. It's not true at all, and here's why. We do not have symmetrical skeletons. So we need to be extremely clear on that. Okay, there's a reason symmetry in bodybuilding is such a big deal. Because it's hard to achieve. Why is it hard to achieve? Because we are not symmetrical. Every human on earth, almost every human, something like 99%, so I don't want to say everyone, when they are measured, we all have one arm and one leg that's longer than the other. Okay? That is just the way we are made. It's not a massive difference. It's probably in the range of a centimeter. Some people 2 centimeters, right? Depending upon where you're at. Okay? We have asymmetries. We have different joint angles. So when you start looking at like our hip sockets, when it's been studied around the world, actually hip socket angle, as far as how splayed in or out your actual hip sockets are, which will affect, different stance widths and things on different movements, they vary more than almost any other structural difference in our skeleton. Like, it is enormous. And not only is it enormous, it doesn't even seem to follow like any sort of ethnic pattern or anything. Meaning you can't go look at where someone is from in the world and determine, because their ancestor came from here, they probably have a narrower hip angle or a wider hip angle. You can't actually do that. It varies within what they found, even within the same country, like small country and same sub-ethnic groups. It varies massively. So there's not even a pattern there. It's just different. It is just extremely different from person to person. Okay? Now here's where it gets more interesting. It can be different on each side of your body. It's very possible for your hip socket angle to be 5 or 10 degrees different on your left than on your right. Okay? The same thing with some of our shoulder angles. So if some of our shoulder joint angles are different, if we have the same identical grip on something, we might have a slightly different range of motion. When we're normal, like when we're gripping everything perfectly even, okay? When we squat, for us to hit perfect depth evenly on both sides, we might have to have a different toe angle on one foot than the other. We might actually have to have our foot turned out to a different splayed out angle on one foot than the other to even be balanced. Otherwise, we'll see some hip shift. But then how many people out there's at least one guy like Squat University, we've got to fix that hip shift. Well, what if it's just your structure? And when we look at the human body, we know that is frequently the case. Your lockout might be different on your pressing on one side versus the other, even when you use an empty broomstick. Your ranges of motion and joint angles are not going to be the same on each side of your body. It is part of the human condition. So accordingly, you're going to expect some imbalance. And here's the thing. If you are training in a way to where you have the load balance the best that you can, in your natural form when everything's tight, that is your normal form. Those are your normal ranges of motion. Okay? And the muscles that you build are in proportion to that. So because everything is going to be slightly unevenly loaded, Some people it's visible and some it's not, because again, our unilateral imbalances vary from person to person. For some people it's more pronounced, meaning for one person they might have an arm or a leg that's 1 centimeter longer, half a centimeter longer, and their friend has one that's 2 centimeters longer on each side. Like the disparity between the left and the right. So accordingly, it's going to be, these things are going to be more pronounced on different people. But what you are doing will build your musculature in a way that's balanced around the forces that you are putting on it. Okay? It's not predisposing you to injury, it's protecting you from injury. Your form is going to build the musculature around those areas in a way that balances it. And it may create visually a very similar balance. In other words, if our angles are different and cause a slightly different range of motion or angle on our left versus our right side on some movement because of our joints, that means that it's still balanced possibly on the muscle side. It's just at a different angle to get the same line of pull. Okay? So okay, you see where we're going here? So if the line of pull and tension is the same at the tendon, once it works around that joint difference, the load on the muscle might be identical. And if the load on the muscle is identical, we're building proper balanced muscle around what we're doing. And when we start trying to force corrections, oh, I see this imbalance with this lift. It must be this side must be weaker. Let me do a bunch of extra one-armed or one-leg exercises to try to balance it. You're actually creating potential imbalance. Okay? We're also then creating a situation to where you are intentionally making one side stronger than the other, trying to compensate. So then when you do those lifts, you'll load it even more. Now you're creating a situation of potential overuse. Okay? Do we understand that? Because you're creating a situation to where you are beating that joint and tendon harder, trying to create more balance. You're creating some risk of overuse already. And now you've created a strength imbalance to try to force it to load evenly, even though your structure doesn't want you to, so that you're putting even more tension on that spot. You're actually potentially creating a higher risk of injury and a higher risk of overuse injury by doing this, instead of simply allowing your body to maintain the balance that it has around its own asymmetry and imbalance nature. Okay? What I would suggest to you is use the best tightest form that you can and do the best that you can. And occasionally if you do have a tightness issue or something, or a mobility on just one side, sure, try to correct it to some extent with some mobility work, but don't try to force it. Because again, it could be simply your structure, and therefore that slight imbalance in the movement is just the way your skeleton is built. And by just continuing to train it, it will build everything balanced in a manner that's protective anyways. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys and gals next time.